Hello, welcome to a lesson before writing, episode 32. I'm Ted Morrissey, and I'm here with my co-host. Uh, Grant Tracey is one of them. Here's Grant's most recent book we've published, A Shoe Shine Kill, and it's the hardcover edition because as you guys know, I just entered your books in another writing competition, and they wanted 4 copies each of your books, and so it completely cleaned me out of my paperback editions of your books. So I had to go back and get the hardcover edition. So this also Brady Harrison is here, and this is Brady's A Journey to Al Ramel. In fact, I think I sent them like 3 paperbacks and 1 hardcover. It was like a really heavy box, but hopefully good things will happen from all that. So anyway, I'll also mention that my new book, Aspiring Child, a biography of Mary W. Shelley, is out now in paperback and Kindle. In fact, this is the paperback proof copy. I don't even have like the real copies yet. Been getting just amazing reviews, if I say so myself. Not a lot of people reading it beyond the reviewers, but that's kind of par for the course. But anyway, I'm glad to see you guys. In a couple of weeks, Brady, you and I will be in Baltimore at AWP 26. Grant, of course, he's going to be acting on the stage, so that's not going to work out. So, Grant, I'll just maybe come back to that. How are things going? I know you have an extra rehearsal today because of that. What's going on with that?
Uh, I This is not going to sound as positive as I want it to sound, but I'm not only off book, but I'm word perfect for the first time in my acting career. I'm usually somewhat of a loose meat sandwich. But this time I've worked really hard at saying the words that Mr. Simon wrote exactly the way he wrote them. And I I don't know why it took me 25 years of acting to figure this out, but I wish I'd worked harder in the past to be word perfect. I always figured, oh, it's close enough, good enough. But it makes it a lot easier to have mindless function and not even be thinking about your lines. You just open your mouth and out come the words. So took me 25 years to learn that lesson, but it's a good lesson to learn. So to all those actors out there, be word perfect. Because it'll be there for you when you don't think it's there. You'll open your mouth and out it'll come. But if you're always kind of tweaking the line a little bit, you're not gonna have mindless function, and that's what you want, so you can be in the moment. So anyway, a long time coming, but finally achieved it. So yeah, the play I think is really great. And I can hardly wait to put it on for an audience. Everybody's working hard, and Simon's not easy because people talk in paragraphs. You know what I'm saying?
What are you doing? What play are you doing?
Laughter on the 23rd Floor, and I play Iris Stone, who's loosely based on Mel Brooks, but I'm not trying to be Mel Brooks because there's only one Mel Brooks. But I'm a hypochondriac, and I'm kind of the funniest writer on the team, or at least I think of my character that way. Um, and I'm probably the closest out of all the other characters to the star of the show, who's based on Sid Caesar, and that's Max Prince. And yeah, it's just been a real bonding experience. Really been enjoying working with all the other actors and an ensemble cast. So it's great, and I get to play kind of a Mr. Wu character. Wells talked about Mr. Wu being that character everybody's talking about, and then you finally show up, sort of like Wells as Harry Lime in The Third Man, and Ira's talked about for the first 30 pages of the play, and I don't show up to page 32, but I have a memorable monologue to enter on, so that's pretty cool. And then I'm there for the rest of the play. So yeah, it's a wonderful script, and it's about comedy, and it's about a group of writers on the 23rd floor who are creating this show. They're all Jews, and they have a Jewish sensibility. There's one Gentile in the group, and it's the time period when television started in New York, and then it's not really till like 1952 or 53 it starts moving west. Like Buffalo, even Buffalo, New York didn't get a station till like 52. You go out to Denver, it's not till about 52. So 47, 46, you got shows in New York, and it developed a certain kind of aesthetic that fit a New York audience. And so shifting demographics, the show is starting to lose some momentum. It's not as cherished by the powers that be upstairs, and so it's sort of dealing with that change in time and what's happening. Plus, it's got the McCarthy hearings as a subplot, and It's a really good script, and it's about um being authentic and you know, being funny. So anyway, I love it because I grew up on Mad Magazines, so for me, like, you know, parodic humor is kind of at my heartbeat. So yeah, I love the script.
Yeah, great, great. Well, Brady, I've been thinking you have in some of your fiction, you have sections that are in play form, playwright form. Have you ever considered doing like a full blown play? I mean, writing a full blown play, or do you just like to sort of sprinkle it in your fiction? Because I do that too in my fiction. I've never written a full blown play, but I have several stories and books where at least a section of it is in playwright form. What are your feelings about that?
Well, yeah, I love theater, and I would be delighted to write a play. I don't to really have the chops or the experience, but I do like incorporating. I mean, as you know, I like different genres. I like trying out different genres, and so since in fiction there's really no limits, you can bring to bear whatever you want. For example, you could write something in letters, as maybe we'll talk about a little later on. Uh, yeah, memoirs, essays you can include. I mean, fiction is such an open and fantastic form. But yeah, I have in the back of my mind all my life, I've dreamed of writing a play. But I will say one other thing, just to go along with what Grant said, then I'll pass it back to you guys. But the Mr. Wu thing, uh, I think one of my favorite books with that is Moby Dick. We hear about Ahab, so Captain Wu, before uh, before he hits the stage. So it's all set up, right? And we get the dramatic quarter deck. I mean, it's such an effective strategy. So it's one that people can use in fiction, and even as Neil Simon. And I should say, and this is, yeah, I lied when I said I would say one more thing. When I was in grad school, but then in high school too, I acted in plays, and I was in Neil Simon. It was in The Odd Couple. So that, yeah, I just love Neil Simon. It's that kind of play of language and wit. So yeah, three cheers, Grant.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I've never written a play per se, but I kind of get the thrill of it because when I wrote my novel, Mrs. Seville, which is a sequel to Frankenstein, I was giving a reading locally, and it's an epistolary novel. We're going to talk epistolary today, but epistolary novel, and the letter writer is a London female woman, and I thought it'd be really effective if a woman could read it, especially if they could do like a British accent. So I wasn't going to be able to do that. But there's a local does local theater. Courtney Wick is her name, and I didn't know her at the time. But when I started looking around for someone to do this for this reading, everyone said, "Oh, you need to contact Courtney Wick." And so I emailed her, and she very graciously did the reading. She read she didn't have it memorized. She read from the book, but she did the full British accent and just hit all the marks. And I got to just sit back, in the audience. And it was just so much fun to hear my words brought to life like that. So I could definitely see the thrill of writing a play and having actually acted and not just on paper or whatever. So I do get that. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So that's all very good. Yeah. So Brady and I are going to be in AWP at AWP in just a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to seeing you, Brady, and Melissa's coming, my wife, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with her and you in Baltimore. And I know the North American Review will be there, so that's cool. But I'll tell you what, I've about had it up to here with AWP. I swear to God, every day I get an email. You haven't filled out this form. You still have to do this. You need to pay this amount of money. Do you want to be included in this media package? Well, sure. Oh, great. That's $900. Oh my gosh. See, the other day we got an email that letting us know that if we lost our badge during the conference, we'd have to pay the conference fee, basically re-enroll at the conference to get a new badge. And so I've never, I've been going to conferences for 25, 30 years. I go to conferences a couple times a year. I've gone to conferences in Vietnam, Singapore, Lisbon, on and on and on. And I've never had anything remotely close to how complicated and how expensive this AWP conference is. I mean, I know part of it may be that other than, a lot of conferences I go to, there's a few hundred people there at most. And I know they're probably going to have like 10,000 people there at this conference. So maybe that necessitates a certain level of complexity or something. But it just seems like it's way more complicated than it needs to be. Grant, you're a more experienced AWP goer than I am. You're not going this year, of course, because of the play. But has that been your finding, that it's just really, really complicated, a lot of paperwork to fill out and yada, yada, yada?
Yeah, I mean, I know just from all the stuff Emily, our managing editor, has to do, because she handles most of that stuff for us, and it's a nightmare. And it's so it's so bloody expensive. I mean, I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it when it's in the Midwest, because then I can travel to it and not have to pay plane fare and all that stuff. And but yeah, I think it's not so how expensive it is. And there's so many people there. Every time I've gone there, I've felt like we're going to talk about Orson, and I know I've probably shared this before, but I feel like that famous scene up in the whatever that thing is.
The Ferris wheel?
Yeah, it's kind of a different kind of Ferris wheel, because it's like you go inside and the doors close and you're in this box. But anyway, and they're looking down, and he talks about all those people down there, those little ants moving around. If one of them disappeared, would you really care? Tax free, dear boy, tax free. And I that's how I feel. I feel like one of those ants every time I go. I find it a diminishing experience, but I go because I represent a magazine, and I'm part of the face of the magazine, and it's important to be there. And the biggest joy for me is when I meet writers who I've published, and they come by the table to thank me and to just talk about their work. That to me is what makes it worthwhile. But all the rest of it, I'm not a big fan. But I'm kind of an introvert anyway, so it's not my bag. It's too much, too much social interaction, too much white noise. Yeah, it's not my bag.
Yeah. I get it. So Brady, are you looking forward? This is going to be your first AWP, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, so everything you guys have said, I'm dying to go.
Yeah, I really am selling this.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm flying all the way to Baltimore from Missoula, Montana. Yeah. So spend 2 days in airports to be there for 3 days. I have tempered all of my expectations, having been to a million conferences over the years, some big, some small. MLA is just for me always just a horror show, monstrous. So I never loved that. Smaller, more particular conferences where you get to know people, but that's just not going to be the case. And so what I'm really looking forward to is if we can grab some of the people whose stories we've talked about along the way, and meet with them, and maybe sit them down to videotape a little bit as for part of our podcast after the conference. So yeah, no, yes, I'm looking forward to seeing Ted, to seeing you and Melissa and the folks from North American Review. Otherwise, and then there will be a lot of grad students and faculty from UM. So I'll be glad to see those folks in a different setting. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I guess I share Grant's. It sounds overwhelming.
Well, and I'm just kind of venting here. I'm sounding very curmudgeonly, but I am, I know I'll enjoy hanging out with you, and there'll be other people there. And I've been a couple times. The last two times it was in Chicago. I think it was the last two times. Maybe I missed a time, but I went to it, and it was fine. I met people that I'm still friends with, through social media and things like that. So that's all to the good. And I think one of the differences is, I'm actually the one having to fill out all the damn paperwork. I think the last two times I went, I was just sort of a cog in the wheel. And so somebody else took care of all that. So I had no sense of all the complications and so forth. But I think once I get there, it'll it'll be fine. So yeah, it'll all be good. Hey, before I forget, I want to give a shout out to After Dinner Conversation is the name of the literary journal, and I've been seeing them on my social media feeds. I think Blue Sky in particular, I see them all the time, and their tagline is a philosophy / ethics short story literary magazine. And I submitted something to them. I haven't heard one way or another. I suspect it'll be rejected because I don't think it's probably quite their cup of tea. But I wanted to get a hold of a copy of the journal because it just sounded really interesting. The idea of it is to publish short stories that have a definite moral, ethical issue as kind of one of the main issues of the story. And so the idea is people can read it, and then afterwards they can have an after dinner conversation about this issue, and they provide like questions, like study questions almost at the end of each story to kind of spark that conversation. So I think it's a really interesting concept, and what I can find out about the journal online, it just seems like very professionally done and all kinds of stuff. And so I was going to buy a copy, but I couldn't really find a way just to buy a copy. So I contacted the editor, and he graciously sent me a copy. I thought we might do a story out of here, but quite honestly, I didn't find the stories that engaging. I mean, they're fine, but they do seem to be putting a premium on morality and ethics, which I think any story has issues of morality and ethics that you can find in them. But when you make that your central focus, I don't know if that's the ticket for writing the most engaging kind of fiction. It reminds me of this is my William Gass reference. It reminds me of the debate that William Gass and John Gardner had, where John Gardner said that fiction had to have a moral component. You had to sort of learn a lesson by reading fiction. And Gass was like, no, it should just be an interesting story, a piece of literary art. It doesn't have to have a moral component or whatever. I don't know. What are you guys thinking about all of that? I mean, I think moral issues, ethical issues are sort of baked into any good narrative. But when you try to make that the centerpiece of the fiction, I don't know, it seems to leave out some other crucial ingredients from my perspective. I'll come back to you, Brady, if I can. What do you think much about moral, ethical issues when you're writing fiction, or is that just sort of something that comes along of its own accord?
Yeah, no, I don't spend a minute just sort of thinking back. No, I'm interested in characters, interested in psychology, interested in events, interested in setting. And so if there are ethical or moral dimensions to the stories, I agree. It's a byproduct of the interaction of characters with the world and with their place in the world and with their own psychology, their own desires. So yeah, no, I wouldn't go so far as Twain, and at the little preface to Huck Finn, anybody trying to find a moral will be shot. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. But yeah, I would be suspicious or have a distrust of too heavy-handed moralizing or presenting ethical arguments. And I haven't read George Saunders' new novel, though the review in the New York Times seemed to indicate that maybe he was getting a little too invested in having a message, a certain kind of ethical. And I have to say, I had the great good fortune to see some very old and dear friends for dinner. They have lived away from Missoula for a long, long time. They're both really accomplished writers, and we were raving about how much we loved Lincoln and the Bardo. And so there's ethics there, for sure in that story. It's as ethical can be, but it's part of it emerges from the drama, the tensions, the conflicts. Yeah, so I guess I'm just that's a really elaborate answer to go, yes, Ted, I agree.
Well, please, that's what you're supposed to do. How about you, Grant? Are you I don't know. Do you find that you are looking for morals or ethics as you read text, or does it just sort of show up there?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I agree with Charles Baxter's edict. You know, protagonists of stories don't have to be moral; they just have to be interesting. But I also, as someone who writes detective fiction, I want my lead character to be moral to a certain degree. Like he's going to slip, like Indiana Jones, out of the light every once in a while. But there is a part of me that I, yeah, I mean, I don't want my character to be preachy, but I want him to try to always be doing the right thing. And sometimes breaking the law is the right thing, if that makes sense. To not tell a truth is sometimes the better choice in terms of morality, depending on who's asking the questions. So, um, yeah, but I don't go into it like, oh, I'm going to tell a story with this bow on the gift that's going to, be the message. And I'm not a message writer, but in terms of my characters, my lead character anyway, Eddie Sands is a whole different thing. So that's the one where I can cut loose and have a guy that's not so moral, and I enjoy that. It's fun to let that
Keep keep it, if you're in company with Eddie, keep your eyes peeled.
yeah,
Keep your spidey sense tingling because he's about to unleash.
he's gonna kick you in the face with his
He's a nice guy, but he's coming for you.
yeah, and I like writing that character, but I also like how Hayden is like, he tries to do the right thing, but he doesn't always. I mean, at the end of, shoe shine, he makes a choice that's not the most moral. And I kind of enjoyed writing that scene. I'm not going to give anything away for people that might want to read the book, but
Read the book.
yeah, that was kind of hard for me to write though. Because I knew what he was doing and as the writer, and I'm like, this feels right. This is the character choice, and I'm gonna let it be instead of forcing my own moral structure onto the story. I let him and Stana take charge, and they do what they do at the end. And so it's complicated for me, but I do think about it. Like I get so tired of watching cop shows where every cop is, got some major flaw of character and they're like I miss the old days of Steve McGarrett and it's always seems to be doing the right thing on Hawaii Five. I'm talking the old show with the great Jack Lord, with that waterfall hair.
Well, and also he had the jaw of truth.
He did
He had the jaw of morality.
And there's something about that I find comforting. And so I'm not saying Hayden Steve McGarrett. Hell no, he's more Philip Marlowe. But I, yeah, I am a moral writer without being preachy, I guess, is what I would say.
Well, side note here, Melissa and I went to Honolulu 3 years ago, something like that. And when the driver who picked us up at the airport, or the driver we found at the airport, I guess I should say, he's like, "Have you ever been to Honolulu before?" I was like, "No." And he goes, "Do you want a little tour on the way to the hotel?" Yeah, absolutely. So, and one of the things he included on the tour was the hotel where Jack Lord was standing on the balcony,
Yeah.
and I could picture it because I loved that show growing up. That was might have been the highlight of the trip, seeing the Jack Lord balcony.
That is so cool. I just said to my wife, because I've been watching all these, I'm up to season 4 now. No, I'm on season 5. I've been watching Hawaii Five-0. I've been on a binge. And I said, I want to go to Honolulu. I want to go to Hawaii for a vacation. He's like, what? You hate the outdoors, the beach. None of that stuff's what is there in Hawaii? I said, well, I just kind of want to cruise the streets that Jack Lord cruised with Dano and the boys. And she's like, I think you got to rethink this. But yeah, so
Well,
Yeah, but you'd also
go
have to
ahead.
rent a 40 foot car.
yeah. Oh
Gonna.
man, that car he drove is yeah. It's I
Sorry,
look
Ted, I talked
yeah
over top you.
yeah
Well, that's Waikiki, that section of Honolulu, and we weren't super impressed, other than the Jack Lord balcony. Like I said, that was kind of the highlight of the trip. It reminded me, it's like Chicago with palm trees. I mean, there's just, like 99.9% of the population of Hawaii, is in Honolulu all at one time. So we'd love to go back to Hawaii. I mean, me in particular. I'm not sure Melissa's quite as into it as I am, but I'd rather go to like Maui or one of the other islands, or at least the north side of Oahu. Now Pearl Harbor and the museums that are there, airplane museums, etc. We got to tour a decommissioned submarine. There was a lot of cool stuff going on. It definitely was worthwhile. You can tell who is like brand new off the airplane though, because they're still wearing long pants. Once you get to Honolulu, you have to wear shorts. It's like a law. So anyway,
that was the thing. Jack Lord's walking around every episode. Sometimes he'll wear a Hawaiian shirt, but he looks like the Lawrence Welk of cops. He's always got the cool suit, a tie. He looks smart, I gotta say, but he's like conservative, but cool. I mean, it's a whole different vibe.
The weird thing about Hawaii, especially as a Midwesterner, is it's like 75. It's like room temperature or slightly above room temperature all the time. So like I would wake up like at 4 a.m. because my body clock was still on Midwestern time, but it was okay because I loved going to the balcony in a hotel and it looked out towards the ocean. It was still dark out there. So I'd sit there on the balcony, eating and drinking Hawaiian coffee, Kona coffee or whatever, waiting for the sun to come up. But I expected it to be cool outside. So the very first morning I put on like a sweat jacket and walked outside. I was like, hell, it's already 75. It never gets any cooler than that. We were in Sedona one summer, not too much long before that. And I loved Sedona, Arizona as well. Same kind of deal. I'd go out in the morning and watch the sun come up on the, over the Rocky Mountain, not the Rockies, but like they were literally Rocky horizon. But it was like cold as hell in the morning. It's like 40 some degrees. And as soon as the sun comes up, it's 85, But anyway, I was prepared for that. But Honolulu is just always the same temperature. So anyway, so I mentioned on social media this morning, I don't know if Brady saw it. I know, Grant, you are allergic to social media, which, good for you. But one of the things I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about to see if you're experiencing the same thing I'm experiencing is how it has to do with AI, artificial intelligence. And we've obviously been talking about in our podcast somewhat, but as a profession more generally, I mean, about how AI is becoming more and more, used in terms of generating text and all this stuff, graphics, artwork and all that. But for the last 6 months, what I've been experiencing is a different aspect of AI's invasion into writing and publishing. And I actually kind of got fooled by it. I don't know, 5-6 episodes ago, I said something like, hey, I was contacted by this woman who'd read one of my novels, The Artist Spoke, and said all kinds of wonderful things about it, wanted to know, if she could help me get more people to read it. And I knew it was a pitch to spend money, so I didn't fall for it in that context, but I did think it was a real human being. But in retrospect, I realize now, no, it's all this AI generated stuff. And that was the beginning of it. And it's just been this sort of escalating thing. Now I wake up every morning to like a half a dozen emails from somebody who has read one of my books and was just completely blown away by it and talks about how wonderful it was. And gosh, more people ought to be reading this. And they'd love to help me, get into more people's hands and get more reviews on Amazon, yada, yada, yada. But I know it's just all fake. It's just all AI. It's not real human beings. Now some of it may result, if you pay them the money they want you to pay them, maybe it would result in a bunch of AI generated reviews on Goodreads or something. I have no idea. But it's funny because when they first started arriving, most of the names of people sounded more like racehorses than actual human beings. But then they've gotten more sophisticated. So now the names actually do sound like actual organic human beings. And now they're coming with like photos that seem legitimate too. But I know it's just all AI. So are you guys getting that at all? Or is it just because I'm plastering everything on social media constantly? I don't know. Does that sound familiar to you at all, Brady or Grant? Brady?
Oh, well, yeah, I have deactivated and taking a break from Facebook because of the assault of AI in part. I mean, we live in dangerous times, and so there's a sort of overwhelmingness to the alarm shared by so many people. But yeah, there's this constant assault, and I find it in particular on Instagram. It's like three or four somebodies who are just bots are adding my account every day, right? And they're clearly just machine driven, and they have yeah these sort of weird, impossible to place names, or they don't quite use a name. They'll just be a bunch of letters, and they'll have a picture, but it doesn't really match up with with the name. So this is assault all the time, and so it's really weary making. But the creep of AI into everything, there's nothing. I mean, it's that genie's out of the bottle. It's
Right.
it's everywhere, and I don't see, for our auditors and for ourselves, like I don't see how we're going to be able to know if somebody's submitting to 12 Winters Journal or to North American Review. I don't know how we can tell anymore whether it's human written or not.
Yeah,
Right.
but respect to that. I haven't had that at all, Ted, but I kind of keep a low profile when it comes to social media. But a couple of, and I can't remember the titles because I've been, trying to send work out and find places to send my stories. But a couple of crime journals state directly, and this is a response to, like, in the early days, like over a year ago, it was like, don't use AI at all, right? If there's any kind of, then you're going to get blacklisted, basically. And now that's shifting. What I've been seeing is we want the sentences that you write to be your own. It's a great line. I mean, your sentences you write to be your own, but we understand that you might want to copy edit through AI, or have feedback through AI, which is a shift in the. I'm not saying everybody's saying this. We don't say something like that on North American Review site, but I think the ground shifting to sort of seeing AI as a tool that can be used like a workshop tool, but they still want the sentences you write to be your own. But then you see how it gets kind of muddy. Like then you put your story at AI, and they start giving you plot advice, and you take the plot of the sentences are still your own, but now is the story still yours if you've changed the plot? According to Hollywood, it's not. If a certain percentage of the plot is created by somebody else, even if they don't write actual dialogue, they did a lot of the plotting, then they should get a co-screenwriting credit. So it's tricky, but I'm seeing that shift starting to happen with like two magazines recently had on their whatever you call it, where the FAQ page or whatever, where they sort of address the AI issue in a different way than I'd seen before.
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing more and more, and have for the last year or more. It's kind of the honor system. When you submit something, they ask you, "Did you use AI for this?" And then you say no. Now, I don't know. I guess they just have to believe people. Well, you kind of touched on something, or maybe Brady did that. And this is what I find. I mean, I'm sophisticated enough, or jaded enough, or whatever enough, that I know it's AI. And they just, it's not going to lead anywhere good. But here's the thing. Like I said, it's starting to be so much. So I'm getting inundated so much that, once in a great while, there are actual human beings who reach out who do want to do good things for you. They want to interview you, or they want to do this or that. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like ignoring any sort of email that has to do with my writing, because I'm just assuming it's AI generated and they're just after money or whatever it is they're after. So it's like the good things, the legitimate things, are getting drowned out by all the artificial intelligence. And and it's just happening so quickly. Like the landscape is just shifting under our feet, and it's so hard to kind of keep up with everything. And like you say, Grant, what had been completely out of bounds a year ago, now there's maybe some of that's okay, and so on. And I just imagine it's just a matter of time before, you have whole literary journals that are just nothing but AI generated, and maybe it's the AI review or something. It's just straight. I've theorized as a librarian that we might end up with sections of books organized by organic authors versus AI authors, and I suspect the AI author books will be way more popular than the organic books, because those are the kind of authors that are popular now anyway. The James Pattersons, the Colleen Hoovers, the Frida McFaddens, who are, the Danielle Steels, who are just cranking out basically the same plot after one after another, and that's what people seem to kind of want. They don't want to have to think too hard about what the book is about. So, yeah, I don't know where all this is going to end up, but just have to keep writing, keep hoping for the occasional actual organic reader, I guess. So, yeah. So Grant, with your acting and your, I know you're promoting your film and you're going to a film festival pretty darn soon, and that's very cool. Have you been getting any writing of your own done?
Yeah, I've pounded out like 4 really good Eddie Sands stories that I just haven't been able to place them anywhere. I keep sending them out and getting, not quite for us, and I'm like, damn. So yeah, that's the only thing I mean, I'm going to write another Hayden novel over the summer. But I've been working on Eddie short stories. I seem to gravitate to. I enjoy writing those. But yeah, I've got 4 humdingers. But they're at places. They've been there for a while, and I haven't heard. And then it gets to a certain point where you just assume, that they're not interested. They just haven't done you the courtesy of letting you know. As I complained last podcast, there is an outfit up in Canada, and I'm Canadian and I love Canada, but this one outfit has never once rejected me, but they've never accepted me. So it just goes into a black hole. If I don't hear, I guess I'm supposed to assume that means that they're not interested. I don't know why I keep sending to them, but I do. And yeah, so anyway, yeah, I'm working hard at short stories and just keep sending the work out. But I get frustrated when I feel like I'm going through a fallow period where I feel like I'm creating really good work, but it's not getting recognized. And that's where I'm at right now. I haven't had an acceptance in about 4 months, and it's starting to freak me out. So it's a sickness, but that's how I roll. I mean, it's like I don't know. Maybe it's the imposter syndrome. I don't know, but I'm getting jumpy right now. I'm like, come on, somebody take something. I enter contests. I enter all kinds of cool, offbeat, hard-boiled magazines, and nothing so far.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I get it. And it seems to be like cyclical for me. Like I'll go a few months, submitting stuff, just rejection after rejection. Then just all of a sudden I'll hit like a 2 or 3 or 4 week period where it seems like every week something's landing, and so it just kind of works out, I think. How about you, Brady? I know you were working on or thinking about working on some sort of action adventure novel, something not quite as literarily freighted as A Journey to Al Ramel, but still in that sort of adventure mode. Have you been able to get any time working on that at all?
Yeah, I've been chipping away, and I had done all that work on the Hemingway in conversation with the Hemingway, and keep saying on the podcast, some trepidation from the legal department at 12 Winters. So I've been sending some of those out individually. So we'll see how those do. So I had in mind, though, as I've been working on this new novel, I think an issue maybe that we haven't touched on, and in particular, it's not really appropriate for our auditors, because what we're trying to do is offer practical advice. One thing I want to go back to, Ted, it's if not this podcast, then another time. How does one go about getting reviews? How do you get that machinery going? But this issue that's not appropriate for our auditors, but has been on my mind, is there a point where burnout begins to set in? Like, we've been at this for so long and have published, had good fortune to publish works. Do you ever feel kind of a little bit cindery, little plumes of smoke coming off from maybe having been at it too long?
Well, I don't. Yes and no. I don't get burned out in terms of the writing. In fact, I've got, like you guys, I've got so many ideas. I'll probably never live long enough to write all the things I want to write. But there is a frustration. Like I said, this book. I mean, it's an odd, hybrid biography of Mary Shelley written in science. But I've been, banging the gong about this thing since October, and like I said, I got a bunch of reviews, which I paid for. We can talk more about that, but you don't pay for good reviews. You just pay for reviews, and you hope they're good. You don't get your money back if they're not. But the reviews are amazing, but yet almost nobody is reading it. In fact, the only people who have expressed an actual genuine interest in it live in countries where they can't get U.S. books very easily. So I've just given them PDF copies of the book. So I do get frustrated, when you've worked hard on something and you feel it's a good book, maybe a great book, if we will, and you're getting good responses from the few people who are reading it, maybe winning an award or two, but then nobody reads it. I mean, that's the frustrating part. Like I say, as a librarian, that's another aspect of my life. I get a front row seat to what people are reading and what they're not reading. And like, for example, when we're working on a book, we always want to make sure it's attractive and we're getting blurbs to put on the book and making it, the description of the book on the jacket or whatever is really engaging. The idea being that when someone picks up the book, they'll read the blurbs, they'll read the synopsis, whatever you want to call it, and they're like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. But watching them, they don't even get to that point. They just don't even pick up the book to even engage with it to that superficial level. They want the same authors over and over and over again. And now they're dead authors. People are still coming in reading Robert B. Parker and Tom Clancy and Clive Cussler. And these people have been dead for years, but their publishers keep putting books out with their names on them. So we're not only in competition.
It's like Tolkien. They're writing from the grave.
Yeah. And that's the frustrating part. The thing that you've done good work, and that if people would actually pick it up and read it, they'd probably enjoy it, but they don't even pick it up to see if they might want to enjoy it. So that part's frustrating. I know, Grant, how do you deal with some of those psychological issues?
Yeah, I mean, I have to write. And I know you guys are the same way. I'm not making myself out to be something special, but it's kind of like that line Victor Laszlo has in Casablanca. You might as well question why I breathe. He's a fighter, a patriot, resistance, all that stuff. And so for me, even if I wasn't publishing, I'd still be writing because I find it fulfilling. And it keeps me going. It's just it's a passion I have, and I love it. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound egotistical, so I want to be careful with what I say. But I know my stuff's fucking good, and it pisses me off that I've never been even nominated for an Edgar Award. That my work isn't well known, and and I send to really top journals, and I haven't got into some, and I see other writers whose work I think I'm comparable to, and they seem to be publishing everywhere in the field of crime writing, and so that to me is frustrating. I mean, I try not to compare myself to other people, just compare myself to myself and be on the road. But when I go through these it's actually been since September. That was the last time I got something accepted. But when I go through these fallow periods, that green monster starts to come out, and it's not someone I like living with, and I'm feeling a lot of green right now. So, yeah, that's more my issues than anything. But I mean, I think a writer has to have a combination of humility, because that opens you up to the process and appreciating other writers. But yeah, I also think there has to be a little bit of arrogance or ego. You have to believe in yourself to keep doing what we do. Like, Brady talks about rhino hide, and if you don't have that, you can't do this and try to publish. So for me, it's that fine balancing act. And right now, I'm a little bit in the green area, and not proud of that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's all it takes is the one book, that for whatever reason catches on, and then there can be kind of a cascading effect. But like you guys, I enjoy the process, and and maybe it's worthwhile if only a handful of people read it and find it meaningful and so forth and so on. Well, looking at the old clock on the Chromebook, probably ought to shift gears to our featured story. As our loyal podcast followers know, every episode we talk about a short story from a very recently published literary journal. Last month, we read a story by Ira Martin? Madison. Ira Madison III. Sorry, Ira. And I let him know, and he was very thrilled. Apparently, he's working on a novel based on that story or inspired by that story. So he was tickled pink that we enjoyed that story so much and saw so much going on in it that he was energized in writing his novel. But this month, we're going to talk about a story in Michigan Quarterly Review, which we've done a couple of Michigan Quarterly Review stories in the past. And it's an epistolary story, and it's titled This Time and the Next. I hope I'm getting the author's name correctly pronounced here. Noel Quiñones is the author. And it's the winner of the 2025 Jesmond Ward Prize in Fiction. And, looking at all kinds of different possibilities for stories to send you all, this one stood out for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the prize-winning aspect of it, but also, this session, I'm teaching the thesis course again. That's kind of been my main thing the last couple of years. And I've got one, MFA student in particular who's writing an epistolary science fiction novel. And very, right off the bat, before the course even started, he contacted me because, he goes, is that still a thing? Are people still writing and reading epistolary novels? And I say, yeah, I think so. I don't think it's completely passé. I think if that's what you want to do, that's fine. And I think this is a good example because I'll read the author's bio in just a few minutes. But this story not only won the Michigan Quarterly Review Prize, but also won an O. Henry and will be in the best American short story anthology coming out next year or whatever. So anyway, it's a series of letters, and there's basically two main characters. There's the father who is incarcerated, and I'll read from the beginning here in just a second. And he's writing from the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, to his daughter, Rosalind, I suppose, Rosalind, and so it starts off with this series of letters, and it's really interesting. Let me just read the first one. It's very short, and so it's from Pappy, as he calls himself in this initial letter. And like I said, coming from the Metropolitan Correctional Center. It's dated July 6th, 2003, and the subject line is "Back Soon." And he writes to his daughter, "Rosie, you shouldn't have seen me like that. I hope your mom was able to pick you up from the station. I promise I will take you to see the movie. What was it called again? Remember, this is your father we're talking about. Whenever I say I will do something, I do it. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm in here, for you and your mom. If you got questions, make sure you ask me direct. I will be home soon. Tell your mom to call me. Rosie, I love you and I miss you. I love you always. Pappy, XXX kisses." And so that begins this series of letters back and forth between the daughter, Rosie, and her father. And it's really fascinating because the sort of backstory evolves over time in terms of what actually happened, although a lot of it still remains kind of murky. But, we get, in dribs and drabs more information about what happened and why the dad's in prison. Meanwhile, there's like more and more time elapses between the letter writing. First it's a few weeks, then it's a few months, etc. And meanwhile, Rosie is growing up and she's becoming more aware of the family situation, the family dynamics, and who her father is as a human being and not just the sort of fantasy version of her father, and on and on and on. And so there's a lot of like revelations that happen during the course of these letters. Again, a lot of it remains pretty murky, but yet there are some things that are spelled out also, pretty clearly. And so I'm just going to stop with that. And I'm really curious to know what you guys think of this story. Again, This Time and the Next, and by Noel Quiñones. And Grant, let me come over to you. What was your reaction to this epistolary story?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's really interesting. We started our conversation talking about theater, and this is a very theatrical story. By that I mean it's basically characters speaking in their own skins without kind of the focalized control of a narrative voice. So we have one voice and another voice, so counterpointed characters drawing things out of each other, saying what they think, but also telling lies and hiding things, and that's fascinating to me. And it's as you were saying, there's things that aren't being said because we're keeping it under wraps, the shooting, other information that I found absolutely fascinating. And I like the trajectory that the story takes. We see it evolve. We see the young woman, becoming a college student. We see shifts in her attitudes towards her father as she's taking in the information that she's getting outside the story itself, not within the scenes that they're talking to each other. So there's a lot of stuff going in off-screen narrative spaces, I call it, that I think's really intriguing. So yeah, I thought it was compelling, and but each character doing a series of monologues. It was very theatrical and very cool.
Interesting. Yeah, no, all well said. Brady, what are your thoughts?
Well, let me begin by saying that we've had the great good fortune over our 11,942 episodes to read some really great stories, and this is one of them. I think this story is a kind of masterpiece. I think it's brilliant. I think it's moving. It's about this daughter's experiences with her father, who Ted said is incarcerated, and he's not a good guy, and he makes selfish decisions. So emotionally, I think the story hits hard. The epistolary form works really well. The gaps in time, yeah, and this story is spare, not it is full of despair, but it's spare, and that's part of what makes it so great. The less is more, all the time working. Uh, See the sort of the shortness, and the letters are all this way. I mean, emails or letters, and yeah. So I've already said this, but I found it very moving. It's a very American story, a carceral story. Yeah, that this is a prize winner, and in the O. Henry stories, I'm not shocked at all. Just a stunning little masterpiece.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in spite of the fact that the father, as you say, is not a model human being and not a model parent, certainly, nevertheless, I found myself really feeling for the guy at
Oh
times.
yeah, no, I agree. Sorry, yeah, I
You know,
agree.
and so he does elicit a certain sympathy in spite of, in spite of some of his bad choices and misinformation. And is he lying to his daughter, or is it just more wishful thinking, et cetera? And so I think that's another masterful thing too. These are really, in spite of the spareness, which I think you're exactly right, these characters are really complex. And so it's just these key details that help us to understand who they are without overwhelming us with all sorts of textual information and so forth. And I really like what you showed there on your page, Brady, because I didn't mark it up like that myself, but you definitely want to be reading the sort of metadata or whatever you want to call it, like, okay, where, so we see that, like, for example, the father is moved to a different, correctional facility because that the address changes. And if we keep track of the dates, oh, okay, more time is spent. Now a bigger, gap in time, which shows, increasing, disconnection between the father and the daughter, yada, yada, yada. So there's all kinds of things that are happening very subtly, but yet are very important in terms of our understanding what's going on in the story. There's also a colloquialism that, the father clearly is not overly educated, and so there's a real colloquial way that he has of writing with misspelled words and very limited grammar usage, and yet by the end of it we see that even he is becoming more aware, more self-aware, more educated. He wants to maybe attend colleges in prison, etc. So there is this sort of evolution of both characters. I mean, we would expect Rosie to become increasingly, more mature and more aware and more self-aware because of her age, and she is in school and she's obviously very bright. But the fact that the father also evolves, I think, is a really interesting aspect of this story as well. I don't know, Grant, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of the
Yeah,
evolution of the characters?
yeah, absolutely. I want to say one other thing. The stakes are so much different. I feel the stakes are higher for the father. He has more to lose, and he's got to be he's got to be careful because he's in prison. He's not getting to see people. They occasionally can come visit. Maybe they'll come visit. Maybe they'll write. There's a 2 year gap between some of the. She's going on. Daughter's going on with her life, so he has to be a little more guarded with what he says, and so like the story's got this rawness and that both characters are saying things they've never said before, which I love that in theater, and this has that theatrical component. And I love the moment where they get talking about J Lo and she's a sellout, and the dad's saying, "No, you don't know anything about this," and all that sort of stuff. And then there's a moment where she really puts down the smack on dad and lays it out there. And it's she's going through adolescence, and she's starting to see the world with more jadedness. And then dad smacks back, and then it's like then he's got to start backpedaling eventually because whoever that is, Victoria or whoever the lady is, that takes his name, and then he's got to build bridges again to bring them together. So I I really like the it's life and death stakes, especially for the dad. Literally, figuratively, and so that's why I have some empathy for him. And I think his apologia near the end of the piece is authentic. It's not just because of circumstances he feels he has to do this. I think it comes out of going on this journey that his daughter helps him with. She pulls these things out of him, and I love the daughter. She's my favorite character, but I do like what Francis, and I love how the daughter later calls dad, Poppy by Francisco. Like it just starts to show like she's getting pissed off at him, right? And that's again like another break in the relationship. And yeah, I think it's really really well crafted, and it would be fun to see two actors doing this as a staged reading. You get get them up there on stage and they do these lines back. I think that would be awesome to see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Brady, do you have any thoughts about any of that or anything else you'd like to point out about the story?
Yeah, I think yes. I think, in to use Grant's term, the term in creative writing, the craft of this story is so high. There's not a word that doesn't need to be there, and the details, the the quality of mind that is behind this story in the setting out of details in these little tiny exchanges between two characters who are carrying a lot of weight and have a lot of grief, and they have unmet needs and they have hopes, but the absolute precision, so for auditors who want to see, in my judgment at least, a story where the writer has absolute control, but in that super compressed, spare way, this would be a great story to read. I would read this if I you know, if I were trying to train myself to be a writer and I was doing my reading as part of my due diligence, reading widely, reading constantly, I would read this story. I recommend to folks read this story a few times to see that absolute control of craft and what the short story form can do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, that's related to one of the things I wanted to make sure I drew attention to for our listeners and so forth is there's almost no physical description of the characters. I mean, we know, we have a sense of their ethnicity, we have a sense of their ages. With Rosie, a very specific sense because of where she is in school, junior high to high school to college, etc. But beyond that, I mean, there's very little just physical description, but yet we can picture them in their various settings. There's references to what Rosie may be dressed up as for Halloween. And so we can picture her in this costume, a ballerina, her dad thinks maybe at one point. And so, we get some things like that for some visualization. But again, so many of my students feel duty bound to give these really lengthy physical descriptions of their characters because they feel like their reader has to be able to see the characters. So we get they got brown hair, they've got blue eyes, they've got broad shoulders, and that's okay sometimes. But I think this is a really good example that, on the other hand, you don't really need a lot of that. That their readers are really pretty good at filling in the gap. And what's important is the personality of the characters and not necessarily their physical attributes. I don't know, Grant, what do you think about that? Was that your sense too, that they physically aren't really on the page, but nevertheless, they're really living, breathing characters?
Absolutely. As I was saying, two characters, speaking through their own skins, and they're both absolutely authentic. And I think part of what you're getting at, Ted, I agree with you in the abstract sense that I think sometimes writers overdo the micro detailing, world building through imagery of what people look like. But I think in a story like this, because it's told through dialogue, it's letters being written, but they're monologues, right? So that makes it a little bit harder to have those physical descriptions without it being awkward. I mean, we get the one reference to, like, he sees a photograph or something of her and says, your hair like J-Lo, and that's what gets us off into the J-Lo conversation. But that's about it, and it totally works. I don't need it. I don't need to know what they look like. I get a feeling of an angsty teenager through her voice and attitude, and I get a feeling of a guy that's not quite coming clean with the past by hiding behind ritual order and the idea of standing up for family and all this stuff when he shot somebody, and then he's like, he got in trouble and he gets moved to some other facility. It's not my fault, but what like, so the voice is what creates what I feel these characters are. It's a wonderful voices piece because again, it's a thing Ron Carlson says in his book, and it's one of the best advices I can give writers, which is, when it comes to dialogue, let the characters take you somewhere. And because this is a series of monologues, I really feel like the writer lets the characters take them somewhere, and it's not like I said, you don't get that control. There's nothing wrong with the controlling narrative voice. I love those writers too. I love me some Toni Morrison and Philip Roth and all those cats. But there's something really interesting about just trusting the voices of these two characters and letting that dictate where the story goes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I know, Brady, any thoughts on that in particular?
Oh, no, just again, this is a masterful execution of that. So, yeah, I hate to do this, but I'm just going to agree with Grant.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a real moral failing on your part. Yeah.
Well, we're both
let me,
feeling good today because Canada kicked France's ass 10-2. Just saying. It's a good one.
there we go. Yeah, I was going to read Noel. I don't know if it's Noel. I don't know. Sorry. I don't know better. But here's the contributor's note. Michigan Quarterly Review puts it in the beginning of the journal. I'm going to go to his website, which is Noel Quiñones.com, and read a little bit more. But it says in the journal that he is an Emmy Award-winning writer from the Bronx. Noel's work has been published in Poetry, Boston Review, Pullman Day, and elsewhere. He's the founder of Project X, a Bronx-based literary arts organization, a graduate of the University of Mississippi MFA program, and a visiting professor of writing at Odessa College. Currently lives in Chicago and truly cannot wait for the debut poetry collection, Orange, to be published by Cavan Carey Press this year. And going to his website, a little more info, I think. Says that a speaker, educator, community organizer, cultural worker who believes in the power of storytelling to build community. He's shared stories across the globe, including Lincoln Center, Harvard University, the Ford Foundation, and several other very cool places. Work published in Poetry, the Boston Review, the Breakbeat Poets, Volume 4, Latinx Anthology, and so on. And then I wanted to go to poems, like I said, appearing in all kinds of places, including Prairie Schooner, Playdays, Gulf Coast. Then, and like I said, this story, This Time and the Next, will also be included in the Best Short Stories 2026 as a winner of an O. Henry, and so on. So anyway, very, very cool. A lot of, really interesting things happening. And as you say, guys, that I think anyone who, wants to improve their writing, they should either wait for the O. Henry awarded stories to come out or get a hold of Michigan Quarterly Review. I didn't check. Sometimes, even though stories are in the journals, they're also online. I didn't look. Maybe this is also available online, but very masterful. And like I said, the thing that I really want to emphasize is these characters live and breathe, and we care about them, but yet there's almost no physical description of them whatsoever. So I think that's a really, really meaningful, observation about this story. Let me come around one last time, see if you have any either final thoughts about the story or just final thoughts you'd like to share before we hit the stop record button. Brady, you're always very insightful about your takeaways from our podcasts. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for those kind words. I'm not sure it's true. But over the course of today's podcast and thinking back about our earlier conversations over the course of our work together, there's the question of the work we do versus the reception we get. And that is, for us, a clear tension. And so we're not Robert Ludlum. We're not Toni Morrison, right? And so there's a tension there, and I think it's worth sharing with our auditors, and it's worth being upfront with aspiring writers. Like, we love doing this. We feel grateful. I speaking royal we. I shouldn't speak for you all, but I enjoy this. I look forward to turning on the computer and to sitting down and to telling stories and seeing what comes to mind. On the other hand, there is a certain degree of frustration, and I'm always a pretty hopeful person, or try to be, at least officially. Unofficially, who knows what the truth might be. But this is a tough business, worth knowing. Yeah, you might sell 1 million copies or you might not.
Right. Yeah, well put. Grant, final thoughts.
Well, I really liked what Brady said. I have a lot of gratitude for my career and Ted for 12 Winters and what they've done for me, and you guys as friends who appreciate my work, and so I'm full of gratitude. I would write no matter what, but I do wonder sometimes, if I were a bus driver, would I be as engaged in my writing? Am I being totally honest with myself? I mean, I don't get paid. I think I've been paid twice for stories that I've published in crime magazines, $50 from one outfit, 25 from another. Um, and I get paid indirectly. I mean, I get pay raises, I get promotion. I'm a full professor, so I'm an academe. So I benefit from being an academe. And I just, I often wonder about that. Like if I wasn't an academe, I think I would still write, but I don't know if I would write the same volume of stuff. I just have to be honest about that. I mean, because I know other people that aren't in academe and they're really talented and they got their MFAs and then they stop writing, or life it takes hold. And I understand raising a family and all that. I did that, but I had to keep publishing and to get promoted and keep my job. And so that motivated me, even though I wasn't getting dividends from it in other ways. So I get indirect dividends. So I'm in a privileged position and I understand that. So I guess that's what I have to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't want to extend this too much longer. I know for one thing, Grant, you need to get to rehearsal, but yeah, I like I said, I enjoy the whole process, and I think that it helps me. My writing helps me kind of process the world and help me to be more centered and so on. And so I feel like if I wasn't writing, I'd really be kind of a chaotic mess upstairs or something, So anyway, well, thanks guys for this. And Brady, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Baltimore. And Grant, good luck with your play. Obviously, keep us in the loop about what's going on there. And we'll touch base hopefully in about a month or so for our next episode. Thanks. Yes.
Before we go, my film will be screened on the first Saturday in March, 10 a.m. I don't know exactly where, but it's in Decorah, Iowa, and so I'll be heading up there to do a Q&A and see the movie with people, and then I rush back for an evening show. I have a 5:30 call, so I just wanted to get that out there for anyone that might be in the Midwest that's thinking of going to the Oneata Film Festival that first Saturday, 10 a.m. in Decorah somewhere. So anyway, wanted to get that in because we probably won't have a podcast before the screening. So anyway.
All right. Thanks for the reminder. Absolutely. All right. See you guys. And we will touch base down the road.
All right. Thanks, guys. You guys rock, as always.